Hey there, it's Vanessa Smith with GettingItDone.com, and in this video I'm going to show you the very first cast on I ever learned and still use all the time, the longtail cast on. Casting on is how you get stitches on the needle. This cast on works well for most knitting projects and with all weights of yarn, and it creates a firm but fairly stretchy edge. The reason this method is called the longtail cast on is because it begins with a long length of yarn, or a tail. As a general guide, the tail should be about 4 times the width of your piece, plus about 6 to 8 inches for an end that's long enough to weave in. Another way to estimate a good length for the tail is to allow about 3/4 of an inch to an inch for each stitch you'll be casting on, plus 6 to 8 inches. These, of course, are both just rough guidelines. With thicker yarns, you could come up short, and with thinner yarns, your tail might be too long. So while you're learning, you may run out of yarn and have to start over a few times to get the cast on just right, but with practice you'll be able to identify the needed length more easily. If you want to be on the safe side and avoid any frustration, feel free to add some extra length to your estimated amount. So to begin, all you need is your yarn and one of the needles you'll be using for your project. If you're using a circular needle, just use one of the tips. So we're going to start by pulling out the estimated length of yarn from the ball for our tail. I want my sample square to be about 4 inches wide, so I'll leave a tail of about 24 inches. Okay, so the next step is to create a slip knot, which will count as the first stitch of the cast on. If you're not familiar with how to create a slip knot, go check out my video on that and then meet me back here. So first, we're going to insert our left finger in between the strands created by the slip knot. Grab the strands with the remaining fingers of our left hand. Insert our thumb in between the strands and spread them apart as shown here. And then pull your right hand down to create a V. Looks like that. And then now take your right needle and insert it under the strand, the front strand on your thumb, and then over the strand on your left index finger, and then down through the loop on your thumb. And that creates a stitch. And do that again. Insert your left index finger in between the strands, grab the strands, insert your thumb in between the strands, pull down, go under the front strand on your thumb, over the strand on your left index finger, and then down through the loop. And now we have 3 stitches. I'm going to continue for a few more. Oops. So something to keep in mind while you work this cast on is to keep your tension fairly loose and not over tight in each stitch. It's easy to cast on too tightly using this method if you yank hard on the strands after forming each stitch, so you want to be able to stretch out the stitches like this and see a good amount of space in between them. I'll cast on a few more stitches at my usual speed. So as you can see, I just try to keep my movements very fluid without ever tugging on the yarn. If you find that you tend to do this cast on tightly or that you have trouble keeping the tension even, you could also hold 2 needle tips together during the cast on and then remove one of the needles before you start the first row. Or you could use a needle in a size larger than you'll be using for your project for the cast on, but you'd have to remember to switch to the smaller needle when you begin the first row. So once you have the number of stitches you need, you'll turn the work to be ready to begin your first row. The yarn attached to the ball will be coming from the right side. One thing to keep in mind is that this cast on looks best when you treat the cast on row as a right side row and the first row worked as a wrong side row. I won't get into what that means in this video, but stay tuned to find out. So now that you've learned how to cast on, you're ready to learn the knit stitch. Be sure to check out my video on that, like this video, and subscribe to my channel to keep learning. Be sure to also check the links below. Thanks for watching.